The recent Senate vote did not end the ongoing debate over completion of the Keystone XL Pipeline. And while the political debate is somewhat understood, the actual process and jurisdictional issues involved in a cross-border enterprise are less clear to many. With that in mind, a panel convened by the Wilson Center's Canada Institute attempted to explain some of the technical and legal aspects of the project. That's the focus of this edition of Rewind.
For those of you who don't know, oil pipeline siting decisions, in fact, are generally not a federal matter at all unless federal lands are involved. The State Department, as I said, isn't necessarily where you would think you want to go here. So how do we get here? Well, as you know, we get here because the proposed Keystone project would cross an international border. The international border crossing requires approval from the State Department pursuant to not a statutory framework, but a series of executive orders issued by past presidents.
Also, because this project is strongly supported by the American people, and Congress will reflect that support. We've seen all the polls that show, if not a 2-to-1 margin in favor, at least close to. And it's worth noting that at this point, all the arguments that can be made against the pipeline have been made, have gotten a fair share of attention, and the needle hasn't budged too much on the American people's support for the pipeline. It is worth noting that the president has never categorically said he would oppose Keystone. He's always had a specific reason at the time for opposing Keystone for whatever.
The last panel talked about rail, and someone brought up, and I forget who it was, about what would happen if you sort of pipelined to the border, railed it across, and then pipelined it beyond. I mean, that's kind of playing around the intent there, I guess, but can you sort of address rail versus pipeline and why things are different, or we just never thought of that before? Or?
I mean, when oil becomes backed up or blockaded because there's not enough pipeline capacity, no one has to go and get permission to put the oil on a rail car. There has been some controversy about the rail cars themselves, as was mentioned, but the actual movement by the railroad of the oil is something that just happens. And so, there's a disparity. There's a big disparity between how long it takes to get a pipeline project up and running compared to how long it takes to build a rail terminal, find the rail cars, and start moving. And we've seen this in North Dakota in a big way with the Bakken shale deposits in North Dakota. 5 or 6 years ago, there was probably no oil moving by rail in North Dakota. Today, there's probably 700 or 800,000 barrels a day of oil moving out of North Dakota by rail. Until there's more pipeline infrastructure built, that's probably going to continue or possibly even grow.
Well, in terms of pipeline versus rail or other means, our committee is neutral. What we're essentially saying is that the decision shouldn't be made by putting the thumb on the scale, by making it much, much harder for one form of infrastructure to be built, and that's what we would like to address.
Canadian critics have said we're stretching out the timing on this, that we're adding more processes, we're taking too long. I mean, it should be a no-brainer, as we heard from the earlier panel. Any comments on timing on that? I mean, is it just sort of anyone's guess how long a permit's going to take for a gas pipeline, an oil pipeline, whatever?
The problem from the presidential permit standpoint is that each time someone has gone in, it's gotten longer. I'm told, I wasn't around back in the 60s to do this, but I'm told there was a time when you got your presidential permit by writing a letter to the State Department saying, I want to cross the border, here's what I'm planning to do, and they wrote you back a letter and said, here's your presidential permit. That certainly doesn't happen today, and each time a pipeline has gone through this process, it has tended to be more difficult and more time-consuming.
One area where the U.S. is fairly unique is that there are these open-ended processes, and one of the things that we would be looking at in terms of process reforms is to put the process on a shot clock, which most other countries do, a time certain where a yes or no answer would be required.
For more information, visit wilsoncenter.org. Click the Programs tab to find additional resources from the Wilson Center's Canada Institute.